So after playing Psychonauts 2 last week, it put me in the mood for playing some more platformers. And luckily for me, Sonic Colors Ultimate has just released, and this is a great opportunity for me in particular because two of my favourite Sonic games are Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations, and the reason being is I just really engage with the boost gameplay that was introduced in Unleashed and then I think perfected with Generations, where it really captures the feel of playing as Sonic, an incredibly fast character, and it demands reaction and you have to learn the levels and gives them a lot of replayability. And I was aware that Sonic Colors came out, however, because it came out for the Nintendo Wii, and unfortunately for me at the time it wasn't so easy for me to get Wii games, I just didn't play it. I was very much aware of the game but never actually got my hands on it. And so this is my first time playing Sonic Colors, even though I've been aware of it since it's come out. So I know how it has looked in the past, but not how it played. And having played it for the first time, what I can really appreciate about Sonic Colors is that it really just focuses on Sonic. Something that's quite common in Sonic games is you'll have Sonic as a playable character, but then you'll have other characters who you play as, which is usually there to switch up the gameplay style. But for me personally, they can be quite hit and miss. Like if you went back to Sonic Forces, you had the Avatar and Classic Sonic. Sonic Generations, you had Classic Sonic. Sonic Unleashed notoriously had the Werehog. And it's not necessarily that these are bad, but just because someone likes playing the fast, reactive-based gameplay of Sonic doesn't necessarily mean they're going to like playing these alternative styles. So I think the fact that this game just focuses on Sonic is very much to its strength. Having said that though, there are two distinct ways that you play Sonic in this game, even within like the same level. There is the 3D behind camera view of Sonic where you can move around in all directions and you're often going at very high speeds, boosting down lanes when you're in this mode. And then there's the other mode where it's more of a 2D or 2.5D if you want to call it mode, where it's a more traditional side-scrolling platform mechanic. And what I find is that the 3D mode is a lot more cinematic, it's a lot more fun in terms of just what you're seeing on screen, and I wish there was more of it, to be honest. However, the side-scroller mode, while not as visually amazing, I think is more engaging from a gameplay standpoint. Like, it demands more of you. So there is a bit of a mix, but in terms of what I got a sense of, there's definitely more 2D side-scrolling sections than there are 3D sections. And if I had my way, I would prefer it if there were more 3D sections, just because when it is happening, it's so fun to play. My dream is that we have like a Sonic Unleashed game one day, which is just the daytime levels. And this is kind of like that. And I think that was why there was so much excitement for it back in 2010. That's why I wanted to play it so much. And that is technically what this is, but because there's so much side-scrolling, it can be a little bit making you want to be playing more of those levels where it's more of that 3D style. And it can be a bit misleading because I felt like the first couple of levels were more focused on the behind camera view with the boost as fast as you can gameplay, and then it starts to shift more into the side scrolling, and then by the time I finished the game I was like, wait a second, I'm pretty sure I spent more time in side scrolling mode than I did in the behind the camera mode. And I think at the end of the day we know that Sonic has its roots as one of those fast-paced side-scroller platformers, and perhaps the developers were just realising that that's the strength and that's what they were going to focus on. Or perhaps it just takes a lot more time to develop the 3D mode because I guess he's running so quickly that you have to create such a large level. I can only really speculate, but that is one thing I would have preferred, would be if there were more traditional 3D boost gameplay segments as opposed to the side-scroller segments, but that's just my preference. If you like the look of the side-scrolling segments, it could be the complete opposite, and you could argue that it makes it more engaging, it demands more of the player in these side-scroller modes, so it's certainly not just a pure negative. If you haven't really played any of the Sonic games before in this style, I think the best comparison I can make is maybe Crash Bandicoot, just because that's another platformer where there's one mode of play where you're going down a narrow tunnel and you have you have movement in all directions, but then it can shift mid-level into 2D mode, and that's the same here. But I think what gives this a little bit more of a distinction is that when you're in those tunnel segments, you're going so quickly that it adds a more reactive element to it. And I think this is good from a gameplay standpoint, because the first time you go through a level, you might find yourself bumping into things a lot, hitting enemies, and maybe even getting a bit frustrated. But you remember where those obstacles are, and when you come back to it later on, you memorize it, and you'll find your muscle memory almost takes over. And it is so satisfying in Sonic Colors to be preserving your momentum through a level, taking the most optimized route, and it requires a lot of reaction, a lot of skill from the player. And I think the ranking system is pretty good in this game. It's not too generous to give you an S rank, even if you barely did anything. I think maybe it can be cheesed a little bit, because it seems to reward you for sidestepping when you're running quickly. And what you can do is just, sidestep all over the place, and it seems to give you a high rank. There was one level where you were continuously running like that, and I just thought, okay, well, if I just run all over the place, and it guaranteed me an S rank. So maybe that's a little bit of a flaw in it that I noticed anyway. Maybe I'm missing something on that, but it did seem like a little bit of a flaw. But okay, let's hop over to the story of the game. It is very basic. It is a story just to facilitate the levels as they exist. So essentially, Eggman has created an amusement park, and Sonic and Tails go to investigate it. They find these aliens called Wisps, and it seems that Eggman is for some reason capturing these aliens, and it's your job to find out why and what he's up to, because I'm sure Eggman didn't just want to build an amusement park. And, well, with this being a remaster, a lot of people will be familiar with how the game goes because it's existed for so long, but if you haven't played it before, I won't ruin where it goes for you. It's very light-hearted, and it tries to be funny a lot. It didn't really resonate with me. Again, especially as I played Psychonauts 2 recently, and I thought that was a very witty script. This, I suppose it just skews young, is what I have to say. I think it's just aiming for a slightly younger sensibility in terms of the script. Like, it didn't offend me or anything, but maybe some of the lines were a little bit cringy. Some, gave me a little bit of a smile. Some of the Tannoy announcement Eggman does when you're running through the levels can be quite funny, actually. But something they do a couple of times is they'll make a joke and you'll get it, and then they'll make a point of really overdoing the joke, and I'm like, you did a good one, guys, and you destroyed it. Well done. So yeah, it's okay. It gets out of the way, and if you don't care about the story at all, just don't worry about it, because it's really not very intrusive. So from a story standpoint, not much to say. Skews a little bit young. It's just a traditional Sonic story, really. Kind of like taking a few cues from Mario, really. Just not letting the story get in the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there is a place for more interesting narratives in Sonic games. When I was very young, I really liked the Sonic Adventure 2 story with Shadow. But I think it's equally viable to just sort of park it for a bit and let the gameplay shine. So from a gameplay standpoint, I've kind of touched on this quite a lot in my opening part, but yeah, it is a platformer, a very traditional platformer, I think, with that focus on speed as a Sonic game, of course, should. There is the element of the Wisps, but they are just power-ups. You've got one that allows you to dig through the ground, one that fires you forward like a laser beam, one that allows you to sort of make blocks appear and disappear. And what I'd say about the Wisps and what they add to the gameplay is I like some of them. I like the laser one a lot, but then ones like the block Wisp, I don't like these too much because they tend to slow down the pace of the game. So for the Wisps that speed things up, I'm all in favour of them, but the ones that slow things down, I felt they were more of a detriment. Although, just because I don't want it to fall into this category, there is one called Frenzy, which is quite a lot of fun, where you just grow and grow into a bigger and bigger monster. Like, it just caught me off guard. It's like, that's quite fun, just like stomping through everything, even though it's not very Sonic at all, but it just worked for me, and it came up few enough times that it, I suppose, didn't outstay its welcome. You've got some replayability. in the sense that you might want to go for higher ranks. There's the incentive to go after Supersonic, which requires some objectives to be met. There's the fact we can now have some races with Metal Sonic, which is like a rival race, which essentially just means you have to beat Metal Sonic in a level. And it reminded me of Sonic Rivals, which would actually have you racing with Sonic against Metal Sonic sometimes. So I was like, oh, that's kind of like Sonic Rivals. I suppose that's why it's the rival face-off. The only thing, it's just a weird point on this, but for some reason with Metal Sonic, if you look at the jet he has on his back, it has got the absolute worst effect I've ever seen. I really hope they patch that, just because it just looks so out of place and wrong. I don't know why they thought that was okay to leave it. It just looks absolutely rubbish. I hope they do something about that. But, in terms of a gameplay standpoint, it's fine. Graphically, the game, you can tell it has its roots in the past. There's some geometry that looks a little bit, shall we say, historic. But they've done an okay job of updating the textures. I didn't see too many blurry looking objects, for example. And naturally playing in 4K is nice and sharp. Fortunately, my capture card doesn't allow me to fully show you what the game looks like. I'm limited to 1080p, but even if you do have to play at 1080p, I think it looks perfectly fine there. Just 4K is sharper, right? And in terms of the frame rate, was pretty much a perfect 60 as far as I could tell, which, considering that I was playing it on the Xbox Series X, I would have been a little bit unsettled if I saw it drop frames, considering it is essentially an up-resed Wii game. And there is the slightly altered lighting system, which gives the game a lot of bloom and makes things very shiny and makes some lights very, very bright. This is something where I would say this is for you to make your own mind up on it. It's just a different look for it, really. I was okay with it. I think when I started seeing this in trailers originally, I did think it looked a bit overdone. And I think I even thought that when I started playing. But after I played a few levels, I just accepted, okay, this is the way the game looks. It's quite bright. It's quite shiny. It is called Sonic Colors, so I'm not going to hate it too much for being quite colourful, right? Finally, just on the cutscenes, these have been AI upscaled, interestingly, from their original 480 samples on the Wii. And, I'm glad they did that at least, because 480 cutscenes would have looked quite poor. But you can definitely see they are not native, because especially when they pan around, there's a heavy amount of aliasing and artifacting. So don't expect these to blow you away. I think they just needed to prevent them from looking that ugly. At the end of the day, I think that's what they needed to avoid doing. And yeah, they didn't look awful, but they didn't look good either. It definitely gives away, if you hadn't thought it already, that this is a game from the past, right? In terms of lasting appeal, well, the game unfortunately is quite short, as a lot of Sonic games are. I finished it in, I think, maybe 4 hours, but at least I'm talking about the main story. And because it's not particularly challenging, I didn't find myself getting bottlenecked in many areas. It really wasn't until the final part of the game. The last level had a final phase that was a bit awkward until I realised there was a way of sort of cheesing it. And the final boss, again, the final phase was a little bit tricky. But overall, I thought the game was relatively straightforward, and therefore beating it quite quickly was not too much of a challenge. But there are the post-game incentives of trying to get Supersonic, and there's also this slightly strange game land simulation which you can play in multiplayer, and it's just some very basic looking levels that you can play through and try and get a good time on, I suppose. And yeah, I kind of laughed to myself when I saw this, because I just thought, yeah, this looks like a very cost-effective way of having some more content, because the levels are designed with very basic textures and the variational levels are just color changes. So I kind of laughed to myself a bit, but I don't want to be too hard on it, because in a lot of the levels, the backgrounds and the environments are very densely populated. So in terms of recommendation, this is, in my opinion, a quality game. I don't think everyone will think that, but I do think that Sonic Colors Ultimate is a good experience. I think they could have done more with the actual remaster. A lot of the changes are more artistic choices that I don't even think everyone will necessarily agree are better. Obviously the upscale is good, but I think we're getting a bit desensitized to this now because we're seeing games just get this kind of treatment for free sometimes through up-res patches or frame rate boosts. So it's not the most impressive remaster. However, if you're looking at it more from my perspective, where you missed the original game, and the question is less, is this a good remaster, and more, is this simply a game worth my time? I definitely believe it is. The only thing that makes me hesitate from saying this is a no-brainer is that it is quite short, and therefore I think for some people it might be worth waiting for a bit of a sale, a little bit of a discount. But if you like what you see, and if what I've said resonates with you, then I don't think you'll regret buying this game personally. It won't be for everyone, but I do strongly believe it's a good product. So, as always, people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.